Ladies and gentlemen, it is welcome to another live video chat number 48. Today it is 29th December, around 4:40 p.m. Eastern, and we are recapping the last 4 games that the Celtics played. In that span between our show that took place on 21st December, the Celtics had 3-1 score, defeated Charlotte 119-93, then Toronto in Canada 118-102, one great blowout win. Then Cleveland Cavaliers blowout win 129-117, and then horrible loss against Toronto in Boston 113-96, humiliating loss. And we're going to analyze that loss particularly because that loss is the mirror of the Celtics season. Those 2 games against Toronto Raptors, those 2 games represent, in my opinion, mirror images of the Celtics this season, and just represents the true colors of the Celtics, because they are not consistent. And that is why I'm resistant from pronouncing the Celtics contenders. They are pseudo contenders. They are in the second tier at the Eastern Conference, like I said, behind Milwaukee and Philadelphia. They are still ahead of Miami and Toronto. Miami and Toronto, in my opinion, missing one more all-star player to defeat Boston in playoff series. But if Toronto is still having Danny Green on its roster, and if they are healthy in the playoff series against Boston, I would pick up Toronto, Daniel. But this way, I would still pick up Boston in 7 or 6 against Toronto. In season series, we are 2-1 against Toronto. And right now, Eastern Conference, Milwaukee 29-5, number 1, best team in the league. Miami number 2 right now, 24-8, 75%. The most pleasant surprise of the Eastern Conference is Miami Heat and Toronto Raptors. Miami Heat 24-8 and Toronto Raptors 22-10. Why Miami Heat and Toronto? Nobody picked up Miami to be top 4 teams after 32 games. This is number 1. They are having, of course, Jimmy Butler and a couple of good pieces around him, but nobody picked up Miami to be top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference. And Toronto Raptors, you just extract MVP of the whole league in Kawhi Leonard from that team, plus Danny Green, starter at the championship team, and they are still 22-10. They are still 69% winning percent. They are still like only 2 losses more than Boston Celtics, number 3, and Miami Heat, number 2. That is impressive. That is really impressive. We're going to talk about Toronto a little later. Overall look, Daniel, to this horrible loss against Toronto Raptors, and I wrote a short note at our page, and I will comment more here. So I said, all I want to say to the new members of the page, We Bleed Green Celtics Fans Forum, that are causing you and me, Daniel, troubles this year with insisting that nobody should not criticize this Celtics team and speak out, and everybody should speak out only positive things about the Celtics team. And I'm giving kudos to the new members that understands how we are working here. How the heck you can find positive in this game and disaster against the Raptors? Raptors outplayed us, out-hustled us in our own building. The loss is even worse considering the Raptors didn't have Matthew Thomas, Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, and Norman Powell. I repeat, Matthew Thomas, Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol and Norman Powell. Two of their three best players are out indefinitely, Gasol and Pascal Siakam. Two of their key reserves, Matthew Thomas and Norman Powell, they're out. And all those four players, Thomas, Siakam, Gasol, and Powell, Daniel, and dear Celtics friends, all those players are good three-point shooters. They're 38% and more three-point shooters. 35, 38% and more three-point shooters. And Boston had Marcus Smart back. Only Robert Williams was out, and Boston had their top five players playing the last night. Also, like Daniel, you pointed out, officiating was pretty much objective or home court on our side, so you cannot make any excuses. What are the excuses now? I'm asking experts and the Celtics fans. The Celtics fans in our page, Daniel, they are saying you should not, Keith Smith from Celtics blog, for example, he's saying like you should not overreact. This is one loss. This is one bad game. Tatum and Brown, they just had bad game. The guys just had fatigue because it is back-to-back game. Give me a break, ladies and gentlemen. Give me a break, and don't give me that crap. Last night when we blew up the Cleveland Cavaliers team, which they are a horrible team. Tatum and Brown scored 64 points. Great. I love it. But everybody compared Tatum and Brown to Paul Pierce, Bill Russell, Larry Bird, and Kawhi Leonard. You idolize them, and you overreact, all of you, to the Cleveland Cavaliers game. But now, actually, when we play the game, that matters because you're playing the division rivals, the defending champs, and one of the top four teams at the Eastern Conference, and you lose. And now, you should not overreact to this game, but you should overreact to the meaningless Cavaliers game. Because Cavaliers are a horrible team, and they're not playoff team, and will not be playoff team. And in the playoffs, you're not going to play against Cavaliers, but you could play against Toronto Raptors. And then, what would happen? I'm asking you, Daniel, and all the Celtics friends. The true colors of this Celtics team are going to be shown on the games against top four teams Eastern Conference and top four teams Western Conference. And here are the results. Toronto Raptors 2-1, Sixers 0-2, Bucks 1-0, Heat 1-0. You can say that except Sixers we are positive for now, but small sample size. Western Conference, Denver 1-1, Lakers didn't play, Clippers 0-1, Houston, we didn't play. We are negative against the Western Conference. So, if we are in those games against top four teams, Eastern Conference, against Raptors, Sixers, Bucks, Heat, and top four teams, Western Conference, Denver, Lakers, Clippers, Houston. If the Celtics are 60% and more winning percent, they are the true contenders. I will admit. And again, Tatum and Brown. If Tatum and Brown in those games against the contending teams, if they score 30 plus points, then they are the true superstars. I don't care if Tatum and Brown scored every one of them 120 points against Cavaliers, Suns, Bulls, Orlando's of the world. So that is not measuring stick. The measuring stick is are the games against the true contenders. By the way, Daniel, when we compare Tatum and Brown with Paul, with Kevin Garnett, with Kawhi Leonard, and with Bill Russell, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Kawhi Leonard, Bill Russell, they didn't become legends by scoring 60 points on Cleveland Cavaliers, Orlando Magic's, Chicago Bulls, and Phoenix Suns of the world. They became legends because they scored big numbers in the playoffs against the arch rivals. For example, the Bird against, Julius Erving, against the bad boys from Detroit, against Michael Jordan, and young Michael Jordan and the Bulls, against the Los Angeles Lakers, the Showtime Lakers, and the Magic. They became legends by scoring in the big games and in the playoffs, by leading the Celtics to the glory, to the titles, or to the finals. So Brown and Tatum will not become anything if they score 64 or more points against 50% or sub 50% teams. And if they lay eggs on every single big game, for example, remember the Sixers loss. Why did we lose against the Sixers? The last game in our own building, humiliating loss. Everybody said because we didn't have Smart, but they didn't have Horford then. Because Tatum and Brown, our so-called superstars, they both laid an egg against the Sixers. And it is becoming pattern, Daniel. It is becoming pattern, because those teams were able to shut down with their defenses, Raptors and Sixers. They were able to shut down also the Clippers. Remember the Clippers game and the Clippers loss, those teams were able to shut down Tatum and Brown with their defenses, and Tatum and Brown laid an egg in those games. And if you notice, Daniel, that whenever Tatum and Brown lay an egg, we lose. So teams like, also to answer to the people that are saying it is just a bad day, you should not overreact. Well, again, it is not bad day. In my opinion, we are 2-1 against the Raptors. Like I said, we are a better team, and we should defeat the Raptors. If everybody is healthy on both teams, we should be able to defeat Raptors in, for example, 6, 7 games. It doesn't matter, with this team. But because they are missing one piece, in my opinion, because they subtracted MVP of the league without any replacement, right? And Danny Green, 2 big pieces. But the Raptors proved last night, Daniel, to me, that they are a deeper team than the Celtics. And it is not loss by accident, because this loss is coming from what you and me are talking about. The way how both teams have been constructed. Because the Raptors, they have tall roster. They have tall players with huge wingspan. They have real big men. They have quick mobile centers and forwards that can run the transition well, which we saw last night in TD Garden. They can cover the space. They can defend well with their scramble defense. And they can cover the huge ground with their huge wingspan, and they can defend, and they can clog up the paint, and the Celtics cannot do anything to just score inside of the paint. And from the help side, the wings are coming really quick and block you from the back. And they are coached well. Nick Nurse is coaching very well the Toronto Raptors and leading Toronto Raptors very well. He's putting his offense in good position, every single player to succeed in the offense. You saw that Nick Nurse outcoached Brad Stevens last night, and what a surprise, he was using, Daniel, the big lineups. Not small lineups, but the big lineups. But I'm going to talk a little later about the game details. Again, the Raptors, Daniel, have advantage in the playoffs against the Celtics because they are still the defending champs. They won the title. They have been on the top, okay? The Celtics with this roster, they are not playoff-proven team. Besides a couple of players like Smart, Brown, Tatum, Shemi Ojule, they are having 1 or 2 Eastern Conference Finals. But majority members, majority group of the Celtics players, they just don't have enough playoff experience. And that is the thing. Many of the Celtics fans just want to disregard the Celtics' weaknesses and systematic problems, the way the Celtics are constructed. And are the Celtics contenders with this team or not? This is the burning question. That's what Danny Ainge said. The question of the season is, do we have enough talent to win the title, or this year or the next 4 years? My answer is no, and it is evident. And look at those big games that I mentioned, and look at the problems that are repeating in those big games. And you, if you're an objective fan, you will have all necessary answers about the true colors of and the true nature of this Celtics team. Because I repeat, this team are not the true contenders despite having fantastic numbers in the first 30 games. And I'm not trying to deny that they're, top 5 or 6 teams in the NBA right now, and that they overachieved in the first 30 plus games of the season. I'm not trying to deny their success, but all I'm saying that this team is not the true contending team. This team is another team of the Brad Stevens pseudo contenders or scrappy overachievers. Those are the teams that personally I hate the most. Opposite to the Celtics fans. The Celtics fans, they don't want any pressure, they don't want any expectations, because the Celtics fans are not dealing personally very well with failures and after the big expectations. So the Celtics fans, they enjoy watching the scrappy overachieving teams because deep inside they know that those teams cannot win the title. Me, personally, this is what is killing me. I'm not enjoying watching the team that I know doesn't possess the talent to win the title. I know at the end they will be eliminated in the playoffs, second, third round, it doesn't matter. And everybody would be happy and everybody would say, well, just wait for another 3 or 4 years and everything will be fine. Only total fools and only total idiots, Daniel, are projecting their hopes in the next 3 or 4 years. Who knows what will happen the next 4 years? Who knows, are we going to be alive in 4 years? Who knows if the Celtics current roster will be alive in the next 4 years? Who knows what will happen in the Eastern Conference the next 4 years? We talked the Nets will be better the next year, and I'm sure that the Eastern Conference will be better the next year. So this is the year where the Celtics have the chance to advance into the Eastern Conference Finals or even the big finals, maybe with addition of one player, if they're healthy. So do not give me the crap, wait for another 3 or 4 years. Attack the finals this year, because the chance is now, not in 4 years. Your chance, dear Celtics fans, to be in the big NBA finals and to attack the title is now, not in the future. Your comments, Daniel?
So, we unfortunately, Igor, are dealing with fans today that, for them, as long if you're gonna call yourself a sports fan for a specific team, you can't say anything negative about that team whatsoever. And unfortunately, it's not only the Boston Celtics fans. We are now today dealing with it with the New England Patriot fans as I speak. In this case, so this is not something that's just a Boston Celtic thing. This is something that's done on every fan base. You have some of those fans that feel in this situation that, you got to keep your head up. You got to keep faith. The only time you should be talking crap about the team is at the end of the season, when basically it's officially decided where they were going to finish, what the final result was in this situation. But
even then, they are not objective, and they say they are happy because they had fun this season, no matter of the results. And they are projecting their hopes into the future. For example, we were eliminated this season, but in the next 4 years, the key word in the future, because the future is the dimension that is not existing, so it is safe to project all your hopes and fears into the future, because who cares, nobody would remember what you said in 4 years, okay? So you're projecting all your fears and hopes into the future, the dimension that is not existing right now, right? And everything is fine, right? You don't have any pressure. We are fine. We had fun this year. Everything will be fine in 4 years, and you are done. Well, it is not good. It is not good enough for me. It is not fine, and it is not going to be fine with the Celtics as long as the Celtics fans and the Celtics management, Danny, which is paradox, they took a blame. They took responsibility for their mistakes. But the Celtics fans, they still are living in the dream with their illusions, and they still didn't took their kind of blame pie, their responsibility. They are refusing to take responsibility, and that is the big problem in the Celtics world. Don't you agree?
Yeah, well, and that's one other thing, the reason why you and me have basically said that the fact that the Celtics players themselves have kind of told us what their expectations were, what they want from this season, and whether or not what they want to get to, if they'll be satisfied, whether or not they get to round 1 or round 2, round 3, or the NBA Finals or a title. They've kind of made that clear. But Celtic fans don't seem to basically say, okay, if that's how it is, that for you to basically say this season is successful, and we're talking about the players themselves saying this, if the players themselves are saying that that's what it has to be successful, but the fans pretty much don't want to have the same mindset. Like you said, the game against Toronto that we lost just yesterday was an embarrassment. That was embarrassing because that was a game where you had all your best players available. The officiating, as you said, was one-sided in your favor. Everything that game was given to you on a silver platter. And I can understand if maybe you lost it, let's say on a buzzer beater in this situation, or one of the calls the officials made at the very end might have basically been a bad one that gave them, let's say, shots to win it with free throws. But no, you lost that game by double digits. And the Raptors' best player in Kyle Lowry was matched up point for point by Kemba Walker, meaning their best player didn't actually play a role in why you lost this game. You lost this game because the guys that everybody says are max players, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and then the guy who is being paid the max, Gordon Hayward, didn't show up yesterday to help Kemba Walker. They left him on an island alone, and unfortunately they got outplayed by McCall, Van Vliet, and Ibaka in this case. Those three guys outscored Tatum, Hayward, and Brown by 14 points. May not seem much, ladies and gentlemen, in a game, which is true, but those three guys got outscored by those guys who aren't even considered max players. Ibaka might be the only one that some might try to say is a max. The other two guys, definitely not. They got outscored by 14 points in a game that you lost by 16. So if those guys could have won their situation, you would have lost only by 2 maybe, and that would have been then on the bench. And at least with the bench, you could have said, okay, the starters did their job. The bench basically lost their battle. But no, the bench literally almost matched up the Toronto bench. It was those three stars who basically failed. But no, nobody, at least a majority of Celtic fans, don't want to go that route in this situation. Many of them want to go the route of saying, you got to find something positive to take out of this game. We do not want to hear anything negative. Okay, so what positive can we take? Kemba Walker, Kemba scored 30. Marcus Smart returned to game action after missing several games. That's
well,
probably
in his counter double, but on the other side, he was outplayed on the defense. Let me find the actual statistics. Somebody said, I think, Keith Smith, that in his counter, he is having 11 points and not a double, but 6 rebounds, but in his counter was negative -3. Plus minus is not the real statistic that will show you individual game of one player, but in his counter had actually negative net rating, which means that we were outplayed on the floor with him. So he cannot be positive on the game. So these things that the Celtics blog is trying to say, that is just not true. Okay, that is not. I'm not buying into it. I understand that they're trying to create the positive atmosphere around Enes Kanter and the Celtics, but this is just not true. This is not valid. And like you said, despite Kemba Walker, nothing else is positive. And anything else you want to add? I mean, we will start to analyze in details the numbers of the game.
Well, like I said, you mentioned it earlier. The situation of the fact is the second night of a back-to-back, fans want to use the rest issue.
Right. The fatigue.
Fans cannot be using that excuse for two major reasons, ladies and gentlemen. One, me and Igor asked the people in our group not that long ago. You all remember when it came to the situation with the Indiana Pacers and the Philadelphia 76ers. We said, Would you rest the best players against Indiana to get a win, to try and get yourself rested up and ready for Philadelphia, since Philadelphia was going to be the team that would be rested of the two games? And fans said no. You can't afford to be giving any games away. Well, you ended up in this situation now, playing a Cleveland team the night before. That game, Igor, instead of us literally putting Cleveland away early, which we should have been able to do since Cleveland is not really a decent team, we let Cleveland stay with us all the way to the very end of the game, and so none of our guys were able to get any real rest prior to going at it with Toronto the next night, and so Toronto outworked you. But then again, fans, like we said, you said you wouldn't actually rest your guys the night before in a big game against another playoff contender. So if every game is really important, then you can't be using the rest as an issue, because you basically said rest is not important in this situation more than a win every night is in this case. And second, if your guys can't do it, where guys like Tatum and Brown, and Hayward, or especially Tatum and Brown specifically, who are just starting their careers, if playing Cleveland the night before Toronto has them all tired out, where the game against Toronto, they're no good enough, then maybe they aren't the max players you really think, because last I checked, LeBron James was capable of putting up two big performances one night after the other at his age. Michael Jordan was capable of doing it back at that age. Kevin Durant was able to do it back at that age. Paul Pierce was able to do it back at that age. So why is it Tatum and Brown back on the second night of back-to-backs after having to play a game the night before, can't manage to get the energy to really have a decent performance? There's no excuse, ladies and gentlemen. The tiredness is not an excuse for the performance we saw out of those guys in that Toronto game. And deep down, you know it. You're just trying to give them an excuse because, once again, you don't want to hear any criticism being dealt their way.
General look at the game. Looking at the loss to Toronto, the Celtics simply didn't play well. The keys to the game, Toronto burned us in transition. A lot of their defensive rebounds turned into quick scores. because our players just were not getting back or watching for a runner. This is pretty unforgivable, as one of Boston's strengths is athleticism of our roster. The Raptors ran a decent amount of Ibaka outside to space the floor, and Ibaka pulled Daniel Tyson in his canter away from the rim, and this opened the things paint to the Toronto Raptors wingers, especially OG Anunoby and Patrick McCaw, also Ronda Hollis Jefferson, for easy layups and dunks. Defense in general was a struggle. There was one play where Smart basically left to defend the entire side of the floor. Smart is good, but he cannot defend both Patrick McCaw and Fred VanVleet. The end result was open 3 for VanVleet. And VanVleet really developed well. The Raptors in general were well coached. Nick Nurse outcoached Stevens. They were forcing switches better than the Celtics did. They ran a lot of screens to get Laurie matched up on our wings or our big man, which is a mismatch every time because Laurie exploiting those mismatches well, because when he is left on the island with our bigs or wingers, he can draw to the line, he can even post up, and he can score over the player. We need, like you mentioned, Daniel, our star wings to show up in the big games. Hayward was pedestrian. Brown had decent box stat line, but seems confused, uncertain on the defense, and he ended up with minus 17. Minus 17. This is not excuse, and it cannot happen in the big games. If you want to be all-star, if you want to be the top 3 or 4 player of the team, of the championship caliber team, you must not have the black holes in the big games. Otherwise, you are not a max player. End of story. Tatum was plus 3, but contributed very little offensively. He had horrible shoot selection lately, and I'm worried about that. It is a matter of consistency to those guys. Brown really improved on the defense, and Tatum improved in three-point shooting this season. But they need consistent effort. Brown needs to defend well every game. Tatum needs his offense and three-point shooting every single game. And if those guys are key to the Celtics season. If those guys contributing, every one of them on their area that I mentioned, the Celtics would win every game. The transition lapses, Daniel, were the worst thing to me. That falls a lot on Brown and Smart. Bad defense and transitional defense lapses is falling into Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown's backs. They are the two best defenders at the perimeter. The modern and transition and the pace are the keys to the modern NBA game. And we should have been watching for the Raptors to try sneak one of their quick wins guards out on to run. And like I mentioned, it is more than day off. It is more than bad game. It is right now what I saw, Daniel, the pattern how you can beat this Celtics team by outrun them in the transition, by forcing the bad switches, by playing the hard defense and out of defensive rebounds to run the transition in the offense and just to overload at the sides to Kemba Walker, to let Jaylen Brown create, to let Jason Tatum create, or even Gordon Hayward, okay, and overload the paint and just block everything from the help side. So this is the pattern, physical teams with good big men. For example, Ibaka destroyed us, you know. Are you going to tell me that Ibaka is the scary man and the max guy? He's not. So this is a pattern. The strong teams that are playing physical basketball, that are running the transition well, that are disciplined and very well coached on the offense and having dominant big, they can defeat the Celtics very easily. And those are systematic problems. Those are systematic problems because we are small roster. We are refusing to play bigs because we want to play the small ball. We want to have advantage in the transition and in three-point shooting. Instead, we're letting the opponents to have advantage in the paint. This game, last game that we lost 113-97, the Toronto had 52 points in the paint and the Celtics 46. Also, they out-rebounding us. The Toronto Raptors out-rebounded Celtics 53-31, which is plus 22. They killed us in rebounds, Daniel. They had 15 offensive rebounds and the Celtics only 7. Out of 15 rebounds, they scored 23 second chance points. And out of 7 offensive rebounds, the Celtics scored 5. So the second chance points plus 18, the Raptors. This is the key of the game. Then points in the paint, 52-46. And finally, fast break points, 11-18, the Celtics plus 7. But points in the paint and the second chance points, those were the keys of the game. The three-point shooting, the people are saying the Celtics should be better three-point shooting team. No. Three-point shooting, Raptors shoot it 14 out of 34 or 41%. And the Celtics shoot it 7 out of 32 or 22%. So from the 3 points line, Daniel, the Raptors scored 14 threes and the Celtics only 7, which is plus 20, which is giving you plus 21 advantage of the Raptors from the 3 points line. Plus 21. And from the free throw line, like you mentioned, the Celtics scored 28 out of 36 points. And the Raptors, they scored 11 points from the free throw line out of 17 free throws. So from the free throw line, the Raptors had 17 free throws and the Celtics 36. The Raptors scored 11 free throws and the Celtics 28. The Celtics had plus 17 advantage from the free throw line. And everybody, also, the Raptors have more fouls than the Celtics. And everybody that is saying that the officiating was not on our side. I mean, come on. What do you want? 60 free throws for the Celtics and 10 free throws for the Raptors? You cannot find the better officiating. You cannot find the better officiating. The keys of the game, like I mentioned, to repeat, points in the paint, plus 6 for the Raptors. Second chance points, plus 18 for the Raptors. Rebounds, plus 22 Raptors. 15-7 advantage edge Raptors on the offensive rebounds. And also advantage from the 3 points line, maybe the key stat, plus 21 from the 3 points line, the Raptors. The Raptors, like I said, played without Matthew Thomas, Pascal Siakam, Matthew Thomas, left shoulder injury, Raptors had inactive Margasol, illness and left hamstring injury. Hernandez, illness and right ankle. Norman Powell, left shoulder. Pascal Siakam, injury, and Matthew Thomas. He should return in 2 weeks, Matt Thomas. Celtics have injury of Poirier, right ankle, and Williams third, illness, and left hip, left bones, edema. Raptors started forward Patrick McCaw, ex-Golden State Warriors, 18 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds, plus 9, shooting 8 out of 12, 2 of 4 for 3 points, 50%, 42 minutes. He killed us. He killed us, especially in transition. Maybe he was, if not player of the game, X factor of the game. OG Anunoby. They are running without Pascal Siakam. OG Anunoby at power forward. He played only 15 minutes, but he's having 7 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 fouls plus 9. He was useful, shooting 3 out of 4. Good defense and not wasting too many balls. Serge Ibaka killed us. 30 minutes, 20 points, 10 rebounds, double-double. He was -3, but shooting 9 out of 14. 9 out of 14. 1 of 3 for 3. It was important because he spaced Daniel Tice, and he spaced and is in his canter, and practically that left the Celtics paint really open for their guards and Van Vliet and Laurie for their drives to the rim. Kyle Lowry, you mentioned he was matched, 30 points, 7 assists and 4 rebounds, 10 out of 17 shooting, 5 out of 10 for threes, 50%, 5 threes made, absolute all-star performance and fantastic. Raptors bench practically consisting of 4 players at center positions, number 4, and their sub at position number 4 is Ronde Hollis Jefferson. Hollis Jefferson is ex-Charlotte Hornets player. He had 3 points in transition, 1 point, and 1 from the free throw line, 1 of 4 shooting, but solid defense from the help side. Terrence Davis, guard, 2 points. Terrence Davis, excellent game, plus 10, 7 points, 2 assists, and 7 rebounds. The guard, the reserve guard, Terrence Davis, 7 points, 7 rebounds, and little guard, and 2 assists. Shooting 3 out of 5, excellent performance for Terrence Davis. And finally, Oshae Brissett, 15 minutes, 4 points, and 6 rebounds. 4 points, Brissett, and 6 rebounds. Stanley Johnson only 2 minutes, and Miller practically, Malcolm Miller, they played in garbage time. So Raptors played with starting 5, McCaw, Anunoby, Ibaka, Van Vliet, Laurie, and 4-man bench. Hollis Jefferson, Davis, and Brissett. Celtics started their best starting 5 right now. Tatum, Daniel Tice, Brown, and Kemba Walker. You mentioned Kemba Walker did his job, 13 points, but Gordon Hayward, 13 points and 3 assists and 6 rebounds. He was -7. Didn't play well, shooting 3 out of 13, missing 1 of 7 threes. Bad game for, despite somebody is praising Gordon Hayward as distributor for having 3 assists. I'm going to tell you, Daniel, that his stat line is not showing the good game. 3 out of 13 shooting, 1 out of 7, -7. Bad game for Gordon Hayward. Jason Tatum, 12 points plus 3, but 3 of 7 shooting and 0 for 2 for 3. Bad game and horrible defense. Daniel Tice, 18 points, 18 minutes, 4 points, 3 rebounds, weak game. Really weak game. Jaylen Brown, we mentioned 17 points, 5 of 12 shooting, 1 of 2 for 3, 5 rebounds, but minus 17. The team worst plus minus players, Daniel, were the trio of Daniel Tice, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker. Daniel Tice and Jaylen Brown, they are having minus 17, which is telling you that we were outscored 17 points while Jaylen Brown and Daniel Tice were on the floor. Kemba Walker minus 15. We were outscored by 15 with Walker on the floor. And another guy that is having bad minus game was Grant Williams. The Williams that was praised almost to the super talent, and I don't know why. I'm not high on him. I think that he's the good role player, will be good role player, but nothing special. He is minus 13. Those were the worst performances in the Celtics jersey. And this is my breakdown of the game. Your observations, Daniel?
Well, again, like you said, our 3 of our top 4 players just didn't show up. They were MIA in this game, in Brown, Tatum, and Hayward. You know, you had the fact that Tatum had just as many turnovers as shot attempts. I believe it was 6 turnovers to 7 shot attempts in this game. That in itself should tell you he was not locked in and really wasn't looking to engage himself in this game yesterday. I know a lot of people will probably say, well, how can you expect him basically to take more shots when Kemba is...
You are correct. Tatum had 7 shoot attempts, scored 3, missing 0-2 for 3, and having 6 turnovers. So 7 field goal attempts and 6 turnovers. Please continue.
So many fans will probably say, how can you expect him to take more shots when you got Kemba taking, I believe it was 23, and Marcus Smart returning, meaning Marcus Smart takes, shots as well. But come on.
In shoots, Kemba Walker 23, Gordon Hayward 13, number 2, number 3 Brown 12, and number 4 actually was Marcus Smart with 9, and Tatum was number 5. So Tatum was option number 5 with 7 field goal attempts last night.
Yeah, but, I think fans have got to realize that, for one, Tatum spent the most time on that court last night, Igor, in a lineup where the other 3 starters were not on the floor with him. So basically, he spent the most time on the court with the bench. Marcus Smart, Wanamaker, and the other guys with him in this case. And it's minutes like that where Jason Tatum is supposed to take over the game and try to basically impose his will on the other team, to basically show why many people feel he's a max contract player in this case.
The lineup was Marcus Smart, Enes Kanter, Grant Williams, Bradley Wanamaker, Jason Tatum. That was the bench.
Yeah. So, it's that lineup, that he's supposed to actually impose his will and show why people say he deserves the big bucks. And yesterday, he seemed more content to actually just pass the ball. There was many times where, this is where I say, Igor, I can't stand the idea of him working with Kobe Bryant or any other big name players from other teams who have shown a history of trying to be the man and actually doing it all on their own. Because yesterday, a majority of those turnovers by Tatum were because he was going on the attack and was trying to force the ball up with 3 or 4 guys in front of him from the rest of the team, rather than just pulling the ball back and waiting for some reinforcements and trying to get the help to try and set a play. He tried to basically force the play by going 1 against 4, 1 against 3, and trying to basically get himself in a groove and he doesn't realize the best thing he could have done yesterday was try to get himself going, but through the offense itself and not by forcing the situation. Instead, he turned the ball over way too many times, and it always led to the Raptors getting some sort of a momentum swing and pushing the lead right back up in this case. You know, that's one thing that basically was proven in yesterday's game. Anybody that saw that would see the same thing I'm saying. The only guy on the bench yesterday that really seemed to actually have momentum was Enes Kanter by going 5 for 5 in yesterday's game, you know, and that was him basically getting shots down low and basically getting mainly a lot of just like putbacks in this situation, missed shots, offensive rebound, and putting it right back in. But Tatum just didn't look engaged. That's how it seemed to me. He didn't seem like he really was focused on trying to play this game. His head looked like it was somewhere else in this situation. There was many times I felt he and Jaylen Brown also in this game were too focused also on the officials. You know, they would be looking to try and draw a foul call, and when the officials didn't give it to them, they would be complaining all the way up the court, arguing with the ref, rather than focusing on getting back down the court and focusing on the man on defense. You know, you want to argue a call, argue it when the ball basically goes out of bounds and play is stopped, or the whistle is blown and play is stopped in the situation, or there's a timeout called. But no, he was literally arguing while the game was still going, and the other team and the Raptors were coming up the court. Jaylen Brown did the exact same thing, where he virtually didn't, was trailing the entire group that was on the floor. All 5 Raptor players, all 4 of the other Celtic players, all made it all down the court, while he was still arguing with the official who was trailing the play in this situation. So he left the Celtics 5 against 4 pretty much on defense, and luckily for the Celtics, Kemba Walker drew an offensive foul on that possession, and so we didn't get burned with his man getting a wide open 3 or a jump shot or a layup because of the fact that he was unguarded. And so I was kind of saying, don't you look ridiculous? The officiating is kind of going in your team's favor, and you still got to argue for more calls to go in your favor to try and basically get to the free throw line in this case. If as it is, you're getting a ton of shots and a ton of free throws, and you're just simply missing them. If you're not going to get yourself into a groove, more free throws are not going to help you at that point. Absolutely. And so that was another thing I was not thrilled to see, and I was not happy to see that Brad Stevens didn't say anything to the two of them in this situation, because that continued a lot the rest of the game. Kemba Walker at one point got called for a travel because he went up looking to draw a foul on a 3-point shot. The official didn't call it, and he came back down thinking he was, and so he got called for a travel. So I think yesterday our guys were banking too much on the officiating to give them the calls and get to the free throw line, rather than trying to win the game themselves in this case. And that was one of the main problems in this situation, that our guys did not focus on making their shots. They were focusing on trying to get to the line.
Excuse me, just one moment. To return into focus, I would understand, Daniel, if we were beaten by the full squad Raptors. For example, if we were outplayed by Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, Norman Powell, that lineup alongside with Laurie Van Vliet. I could swallow that, They're a good team, and it is happening. But again, they showed, despite the Celtics fans wants to you know, the Celtics fans wants to present the situation where the Celtics having the deep team, you know, but actually this game the Raptors showed that they have deeper team. They don't have talent up front like the Celtics, but on the bench they have deeper bench. So the potential playoff matchup would be interesting. The Celtics would have the advantage, but you know, it would be the tough series, and especially if the Celtics having the home court advantage, the Celtics would be favorite. Okay, but the situation is not good because the Raptors just saw the pattern how they can beat us. Okay, it is just like when you crack some code. Okay, when you crack the code, you can enter the site every time you want. You know. So Nick Nurse is very bright and intelligent young coach. He realized the pattern how to beat the Celtics, and I don't like it. Okay, in the future, we will see what happens. Again, when we talk about the next 4 games. Daniel, we are playing against the rivals we should defeat because there is huge talent gap between the Celtics and the next 4 rivals that are Charlotte Hornets in Charlotte on New Year's Eve, 9 p.m. Eastern. Then Atlanta Hawks, Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern in Boston. Then Chicago Bulls in Boston, Saturday, 2 a.m. It will be interesting to see the reaction from especially Brown and Tatum on back-to-back night against Chicago on 4th. Then Daniel, Washington, 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday 6th in Boston. We should win the next 4 games. We're playing 3 in Boston, and then we're playing San Antonio Spurs in Boston on Wednesday 8th January, and Philadelphia 76ers in Boston on Thursday 9th January. So up until San Antonio, we have the clear path for the 4 more wins. And I really, really do not want to hear any excuses in the case we just lay an egg against those 50% or less opponents, next 4 opponents. What do you say?
Again, this is where I say fans who want to criticize you and me for talking about how this team may not be a championship contender in terms of really being the one that you can say is the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference, you just have to look at who we are losing to and basically say, what does that say about you? Granted, you can lose to anybody on any given night. It's the truth. Philadelphia is doing the exact same thing, losing to some of these other teams, basically who are, under 500. But Philadelphia is also getting victories against the top teams in the league, which is the thing.
They are, Daniel, Philadelphia is aware what is wrong with Philadelphia. Nothing except they have smart coach and they are doing something that the Celtics are not doing and they should be doing because the Celtics are not smart as them. They are doing load management. They have older players at the roster like Al Horford and they have injury-prone players like Simmons and Embiid, and they are giving them rest because they don't want the top 4 seed because they know they can walk into the Eastern Conference Finals even without top 4 seed. They have playoff experience. They have stars and superstars, unlike the Celtics. And they don't want 60 wins. They don't need the home court advantage in the second round. And they are making the case for themselves, like you said, on the big games, but they don't need the 60 wins to prove to the world that they are the contenders, because everybody knows they are the contenders. On the other side, the Celtics need the second seed and the home court advantage in the second round because they are not playoff proven teams and they don't have the superstars. And in the NBA, you need the superstars to win the playoff series, right? So the Philadelphia is confident and they're just coasting throughout the regular season and doing load management. And the Celtics are not doing that, because it's obvious that the Celtics want at least second seed for the playoff because they are the new team and not playoff experienced team, right?
Exactly. And like you said, the 76ers right now just gave a whooping to the Milwaukee Bucks Christmas Day, so just earlier this week in this case. They've defeated us twice in this case, once without even having all their key players available. In this case, at least, they had Horford missing in that game, and that was here in Boston. Us, on the other hand, we've got no wins against them. We've got one win against Milwaukee in the only game we've played against them. And we're 2-1 against Toronto, if I'm correct, thus far this season. So, you right now are sitting 3-3 against the other 3 teams who are likely to be the top 4. The other 3 teams with you for the top 4 in the Eastern Conference in this case. But only 2 of those teams have a superstar on them that everybody views as a top 10, potential top 5 player in the NBA, depending on, where you put other guys in the league in this situation. Embiid for Philly, Giannis for Milwaukee in this case. Us beating Cleveland, or us beating the New York Knicks, or us beating the Brooklyn Nets this year is not going to actually lift us in terms of being able to actually say that that we are a better up there with those other teams in the NBA in this situation in the Eastern Conference. Because any one of those teams should be able to beat Cleveland or the New York Knicks or the Brooklyn Nets, especially if Kyrie isn't playing in this situation, or the Charlotte Hornets in this case. It's your games against themselves that will determine if you're basically if you basically deserve to be put up there in the rankings. Same thing with the teams in the Western Conference. Do you basically deserve to be in the rankings with LeBron and the Lakers, or Kawhi and the Clippers, or the Denver Nuggets in this case, or the Rockets in this situation? Well, you won't know that unless you beat them. And the Celtics, unfortunately, this season have not had a decent record against those top teams. You said it earlier in the chat here, and that's why I have said on the group or in the group, should I say, on the radio show and even in previous chats, if I'm right, that if I have to choose to lose a game against Cleveland to have a better chance to knock off Philly or Milwaukee or Toronto or the Lakers or one of those other teams, I'm taking it. Because you're not going to hear NBA fans or NBA analysts or sports shows talking about you for beating Cleveland. They're going to talk about you two mornings later after you've lost the very next night to those teams. And we've seen it, Igor. How many times have the Celtics really been talked about this season by any of these sports shows? First Take, First Things First, Undisputed, if you're somebody that follows those shows like I do. You don't see those shows really talking about the Celtics at all unless they get a major statement victory over someone. But unfortunately, because those victories are not really coming as often as they should for a team that everybody feels has three max-worthy players, it's usually going to Philly, who gets most of the time talked about, or Milwaukee, or the Lakers in this situation. And then people wonder why, in this case, other big-time superstars don't want to come to Boston. On top of the fact that you got to deal with the winter weather and all that during the NBA season. It's because of the fact that deep down right now, you only have one guy who's really a proven big-time star, which is Kemba. Hayward is the close second because he was able to do it while he was in Utah carrying the team. But Tatum and Brown have not proven anything yet in terms of being able to carry a franchise. This is the first year that they're really going to have that opportunity in this case. And thus far, what are we seeing? Every time we play one of those top teams, Kemba Walker is the one that ends up showing up and ends up putting on the big boy boots, putting on the Paul Pierce or Larry Bird or Bill Russell jersey, whoever you want to use, and has the big-time performance. It's against the weaklings of the league, teams that you basically should be giving a whooping by 20, 30, 40 points, where we see Brown and Tatum really show up and do the damage in this case. And until we start seeing those performances against Philly, against Milwaukee, against Toronto, and all these other top teams, Lakers, Clippers, Denver, until we see both those guys show up and do to those teams what they did the night before the Toronto game, in this case against Cleveland, where I believe it was 34 points for Brown and 30 points for Tatum.
Yeah, 4 points from Tatum and Brown, yes.
Until we see that type of a performance from those two consistently, I do not give a crap about the win and loss situation, Igor, when it comes to those games. If you can have a performance against those teams consistently, and you put up those performances, and let's say you still lose, fine. I got nothing to say about you because you did your job in this case, and that's the truth. You put up a big-time performance, and unfortunately the other team just had their guys had just as big of a performance as you did. But if you show up and Kemba Walker has 30 or 40 points against Philly, and you come up with 10 or 12 or 8 points, and you're supposed to be somebody that's worthy of a max contract, come on.
Right.
What is that supposed to say about you in this situation? You wanted the best players technically in terms of the star power gone from last year's team to leave. Now you're the ones basically with Kemba in front, and you still don't have what you need to actually basically play like the superstars of this league do. So it's embarrassing, Igor. It's embarrassing. But the next few games, like you said, we're playing a bunch of weaklings. So the next few games, yeah, we should be winning. There's no excuse to lose any of them in this case. But I don't want to hear the fatigue, the injuries, the weather, the wet floor, the conditions
the in the garden and something like that. I don't want to hear excuses in the next 4 games.
Yeah.
You can lose to the Spurs, you can lose, and we will see the right nature, the right color of the team against Philadelphia. If you defeat Philadelphia in Boston in second attempt, we will respect you. The same with the team, the same with Brown and Tatum. If you lose for the third straight time against Philadelphia, then I don't want to hear the fans saying, well, Philadelphia is weak, they had luck, they had help of the officials and that kind of crap. If they win on 9th, they would win the playoff, season series, regular season series against us. So, I don't want any more excuses, and the Celtics fans, they are just acting childish, I don't like something, so I just disregard it, I just pretend it is not existing. I don't like the outcome of Toronto game, so I'm going to pretend that game is not existing. And when we crush Atlanta or Charlotte, and when Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum crush, Atlanta and Charlotte, and when they score 60 plus points against Atlanta, they are the next big thing. They're the new Bill Russell, the next Jojo White, the next Larry Birds, right? Well, imagine if Larry Bird, Jojo White, only showed up against Cleveland Cavaliers, Charlotte's, Orlando's, Bullses of the world. Would they become the legends? I really don't think so. So, in other words, I really think, Daniel, that majority of the Celtics fans just lost the compass, just lost the focus, and they just mixed up the priorities. So, you need to figure out the things in your head, okay, to make an order in your head where if you want to comment basketball, if you don't want the people to laugh at you when you comment basketball, okay, you need to figure out the priorities in your head first, then to preach to the other Celtics fans what they should do and what they should look at, right?
Exactly, and that's what we're basically trying to say. Every excuse, Igor, I'm sure every one of our members have a notebook. They've written down 1,000 of them. Oh, Jaylen Brown basically couldn't play well today because he had gas and he couldn't let the fart out before the game started in this situation. Jason Tatum couldn't play well because he broke his pinky nail in this situation and wasn't able to basically file it before we played. Literally, that's the way it's come down to with some of these fans. That basically, every time there's a bad performance by them, in this case, and you could say you weren't supposed to have a bad performance versus this team because they are
just disregard. Just disregard it. Just pretend
it in this situation.
Yeah, right.
And that's where you and me say that is not the way it's supposed to work in this case. Especially after you all did not want to say just disregard it last year when the team had bad performances with Horford, Irving, Morris, and Baines running the show. If you were not willing to give the team a break last season, then why the heck should we be giving the team a break this season? It doesn't work like that in this situation. You need to be consistent as NBA fans in this case and not go the route of saying, oh, this team is better than last year, but we're going to basically make it where they don't have to feel any pressure of having to basically outplay the guys they chose to get rid of in this situation by making sure they know even if you guys do lose, we're not going to basically criticize you for it because you guys basically made it fun. And that's what we're seeing here. So again, that Philly game is the only game that matters in the next few weeks. In this case, the week after that, they play against Milwaukee the following Wednesday, if I'm right, or the following Thursday. So you have 2 games in the next 2 weeks or so that are gonna be big in this situation. every other game up to that point, you should be winning. There is no excuse to lose any other games, especially knowing, Igor, that there is only up to that point, and I'm looking at the schedule here now, there's only one more back-to-back set up to that point with the Philly game in this case, which is, and actually I'm incorrect, there is no more, so the Philly game itself, yes, I was right, which is this weekend. The Atlanta Hawks play against us Friday in Boston, and then we got to play the following night in Chicago. So you shouldn't be losing to either of those teams, knowing that none of them are playoff contenders. That's a back-to-back that you should be sweeping and have enough energy to go to a casino and win $1 million pretty much, ladies and gentlemen. That's the way I'm pretty much looking at it. So, come on. You are going to be fine. And again, I say it. The back-to-back against Philadelphia, you got to play the night before in this case, but against the San Antonio Spurs. You've already beaten the Spurs this season, so you got nothing to prove when it comes to going against the San Antonio Spurs. So, Brad Stevens, for God, please tell me you can hear me somewhere out there. Somehow let this message get to you. Let the guys sit in that game against San Antonio and focus on winning that game against Philadelphia. Because like you said, we lose that game against Philadelphia, ladies and gentlemen. The season series is clinched. You lose the tiebreaker, meaning all Philadelphia has to do is tie you with the same record. They don't even have to have a better record than you in order to have home court if you meet in the playoffs in this situation. So just win one time against Philadelphia in order to basically guarantee they're not going to get the tiebreaker until that final game later on, which I believe is in February in this case. Because I just said it a few minutes ago, Igor, you can beat San Antonio the night before. Nobody's going to say a damn thing about it Wednesday morning. But you lose to the 76ers Wednesday night, they'll be talking about that Thursday morning for sure. And it's only going to be praise for the 76ers, and whether or not it's been proven, you don't have what it takes to beat the 76ers. So why not forget about the game that you know you don't have to really win to prove anything, and make sure you actually have a legitimate shot to win the game that you do have to win to actually prove something in this case. Especially knowing, Igor, the 76ers are not in the Eastern Conference, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like beating them is actually going to have an impact in knocking them further down in the standings behind you in the East. So,
because they are number 5 right now with 12 losses.
Yeah,
you're correct.
But again, they're not in the Eastern Conference in this case. So, unlike the last time where you had Indiana and Philly the night after, beating Indiana meant, at least by beating them, you knock them further behind in the standings, meaning if things don't go well later on this season, there's a pretty good chance that win for you over Indiana could determine whether or not you have home court over them. But this time around, the team you play the night before isn't in the East. So beating them is not going to prove anything for you in this situation in terms of a tiebreaker situation later on this season. So forfeit that game against the Spurs in this situation and make sure you win the one that has to be won, which is the game against Philadelphia. You don't go that route, and let's say you win against San Antonio, but lose against Philly, well then, hey, once again it'll prove rest in this situation doesn't mean a damn thing, and fans can never again use that excuse with this team in this case. And heck, you lose against San Antonio and Philadelphia, that would be worst case scenario in this situation. And fans, there will be no excuse at that point if you lose both those games, knowing what that back-to-back what it would probably mean in the standings in the situation, knowing that you're getting closer to the trade deadline. The trade deadline would only be a month away at that point in this case, and Danny Ainge is probably going to have to make a decision. Is this team truly capable of making a deep run, or are they only a one-and-done type of team, getting past round one and basically just getting to round 2, and am I willing to accept that if another team comes giving me something decent to take one of my guys that could possibly help us get past round 2.
Right. You said many good things, and I will never understand why the fans, for example, are so excited about team potentially winning 60 regular season games. I heard some of them saying, well, if we win 60 games, we're better than the last year's team, even if we lose in the second round. Wait, what? We are better than the last year's team if we are losing the second round? What is the difference? What are you getting for winning 60 games in the regular season? Nothing. Except, for example, the second or first seed in the Eastern Conference. And are we going to be like Raptors to hang the division banners? I mean, come on. You're not getting anything for winning 60 games. Or, unless you win the Eastern Conference, this is the success with any team, without a doubt. If you're in the big finals, the season is successful. If you are, like you said, in the Eastern Conference finals, the season is better than the last year's, and yes, this team would prove that way that they are better than the last year's team, right? But otherwise, I really don't care about number of wins in the regular season. I really don't. As long as the Celtics are top 4, and I admit that they need the home court advantage, but if you have to choose between the health and between winning in the big games, like you mentioned, and losing the small games, I would always choose health, rest, load management to secure my players to be healthy and ready and in the good mood and condition for the playoffs over winning 60 games in the regular season and then losing in the first or the second round. Sadly, it seems like Brad Stevens and the Celtics somehow do not understand that and do not follow that kind of logic. I really hope when you mentioned Daniel Ainge that he would make a notes from the games that we lost, and he would see what are our weaknesses and deficiencies, what are our systematic problems, and what do we miss. And I don't want, I don't understand the logic of some of our fans which are saying, well, this is just like rehearsal season, whatever we do this season, it doesn't matter because we're projected to win the title in 3 or 4 years. Please do not give me the projections 4 or 6 years because you are either stupid or just a moron. Nobody knows what will happen in the NBA in 4 years. The whole landscape could change in one summer, as you could see, and you could look like total idiot this way, So you're living now, the Eastern Conference and the NBA is open now, and all I care is what the Celtics will do now. When I'm alive, when you're alive, when we have the chance to make it to the big finals and potentially give the run to the Western Conference winner. I don't care what would happen in 4 years right now. I cannot know. And if somebody's making the long time projections, 4 years, Daniel, and dear Celtics fans, you should know at once that this man is biased and this man is a fraud. This man is trying to make you look stupid, and this man or person is trying to sell you sell you fog, sell you nothing. you know. So do not buy those kind of stories. The future is now, and the Celtics must attack the title right now, not in 4 years. Am I correct?
That's another thing that fans don't seem to understand in this situation. That in this case, you have fans don't seem to realize that this season, you and me have said the Eastern Conference is weaker. We're not saying,
right,
ladies and gentlemen, that the Eastern Conference is garbage in this case or anything like that. We're saying that
comparing to the last year.
Yeah, comparing to last season, this Eastern Conference is not as strong at the top of the mountain as it was last season. It may be stronger towards the middle of the mountain in this situation. Teams that are trying to find a way to get to the to the very top in this case. They're trying to figure out what's the right path. Do I go left? Do I go right to try and get there quicker? But at the very top of that mountain, you have in this situation only 2 teams currently standing in front of you to get to that top in this case. Last year, it was 3. Philly, Milwaukee, and Toronto. This time around, it's 2. Milwaukee and Philly. Toronto in this situation has now fallen further to the pack in this situation with you in this case. And you now have to basically get into a race with them to figure out which one of you basically is now better, even though you and me agree probably in a game where, both teams are fully healthy, we still take Boston over Toronto in this case. But you and Philly have kind of fallen away from Milwaukee, and you and Toronto have fallen away from Milwaukee and Philly, and those 2 teams are the only ones standing in front of you from getting to the top of the mountain in this situation, of the East Mountain, to look all the way down several miles to see who's standing on the West Mountain in this case. You come next season, ladies and gentlemen, things are going to change. Keep in mind, there's too many people in terms of Celtic fans that are not looking at the whole picture of what we are going to be facing. For one, you already gave Jaylen Brown his max contract, which means if you choose to give Jason Tatum his max contract, you are not going to have much money available to go sign anybody that's going to be a decent impact player in the free agency market this summer. Because remember, you have to decide whether you're going to use the bird rights to give Tatum his max contract before you can even sign somebody new from another team. If you all recall, that's the whole reason why we had to basically let go of guys like Baines and Morris and all of that to get Kemba Walker, because we couldn't sign them and still have the money to basically sign Kemba, because you got to take care of your own free agents first. So that is something fans got to keep in mind. You're not going to be able to sign anybody decent if you're trying to give Tatum now a max deal, and you damn sure ain't going to be able to do it if you give Tatum and Hayward, in this case, a contract extension. So next year you're looking at being the same team you are now. Kemba, Hayward, Brown, Tatum as your big-time players, max contracts, and then in this situation, you're going to have, rookies filling out the rest of the bench in this case, guys on their second years of their rookie contracts in this situation. So fans got to, understand that in this case. Next year, you're not going to be in a position to really do much to increase your roster. But look at Brooklyn. Brooklyn this year may not be doing well, but they haven't had time to. Kyrie's been injured all season, for most of the season, and Kevin Durant hasn't played a single game. If you people
and Caris LeVert, their third best player, he missed majority of the regular season thus far.
So if you people are crazy enough to think that next season Brooklyn is not going to be up there fighting for a top 4 seed, then you obviously don't know basketball. Unless Milwaukee loses some key players this offseason, or Philly loses key players this offseason, they will be back up there at the top. Toronto will probably be back up there in the top because I'm sure they'll manage to maintain their key guys.
One move away from us.
Exactly. So they'll be able to basically keep the most of their roster and probably be fighting again for the top four. Miami, like you said, is still right behind you. They're still going to have Jimmy Butler. Who knows who else they might add, whether it's at the trade deadline this season or in the off season. So you and me are basically saying your best chance at trying to get to the NBA Finals and proving that you can basically get there is this season, when there's only two teams standing in your way. Not next year, when you're going to have Philly, Milwaukee, Toronto, and Brooklyn, and possibly Miami, or in a few years where it may be even more teams in the East for all you know. It's this season. And the fact that many fans seem to think that all of a sudden in a few years, Jaylen Brown's going to be LeBron James and Jason Tatum's going to be, Kevin Durant, and those two are going to dominate the Eastern Conference. Really. Last I checked, this league has turned into a league where really two stars basically ain't really enough. You're going to have 3, 4 with Hayward in the situation in Kemba, but what are you going to have for a bench? If right now you can't even really stay afloat and really get past Milwaukee and Philly, what makes you think our bench is going to be any better in a few years? Think about it. Think about it, Igor. Every big three that we've seen, or Fantastic Four, if you want to go with Golden State, what have we seen for the bench? We've seen veteran talent playing as role players off the bench. You think I'm lying, ladies and gentlemen? Go back about 10 years ago, the last time we won a championship. Garnett, Allen, and Pierce. What did they have? You had veterans like James Posey, P.J. Brown, Sam Cassell, Eddie House.
Eddie House, James Posey, Leon Paul, P.J. Brown, the super bench.
Exactly. Veteran talent basically taking over to give your even bigger time stars that were also veterans the chance to rest. And we've seen that in Cleveland when LeBron and Kyrie won with Kevin Love leading the way. We've seen that in Golden State with them winning. You are not going to win no damn title with only 4 stars having to do all the work because of the fact that you have a bench filled up with first-round draft picks in this situation and no veterans.
Salary cap implications. You don't have money to fill the bench because you have 4 maximum contracts.
Exactly, and that's where fans got to realize it. You give all the money to those guys because you want them to stay here long term. Unless you get veterans who are willing to do the same thing in Boston that they're doing in Los Angeles, which is give me $500,000 and I'll play this season for you because I know you got a legitimate shot to win a championship. That's why you see so many players run to every team LeBron goes to, or do it to run to Golden State. Those teams get that benefit because they've got guys who are established superstars that have made it to the finals, know how to get the job done in this situation, and those players feel, I'll take less money for a chance to win a championship. Plus, they're in the West, Igor. West Coast means better weather, Hollywood, all the big lifestyle. Out here in the East, unless you're in Miami to get the hot weather and all that, or unless you're in New York to actually get the movie stars and all that, you ain't gonna get any of that type of benefit coming to you. And fans have got to basically get that screwed into their brain somewhere and realize giving up 4 max contracts to Hayward, Tatum, Brown, and Kemba is only going to make it where the next several years you're going to have to depend on those guys to do all the work like you're causing them to have to do this season. And it may not be enough, especially when the Brooklyn Nets and all these other teams start to get their act together.
Right. We said it all. I hope. So I think that we, like I said, can expect the 4 wins up until San Antonio. I think that we are favorites against San Antonio too. And we will see what happened in the crucial game against Philadelphia 76ers. We gave our advices. We don't think that the Celtics can win playing small ball against Philadelphia. Philadelphia is having tall players, just like Toronto, physical players that are playing physical basketball, strong defense, and it will not pass you to play the small ball type of basketball. So also we don't want to hear excuses because Philadelphia game is back-to-back game. This game is important for many reasons. We explain why, and we really expect maximum effort and the first win against Philadelphia this season. This is the only way you will prove you're the true contender. If you defeat Philadelphia, if you defeat Milwaukee, if you defeat Toronto, Miami, if you defeat the Lakers, if you defeat the Clippers, not by defeating and, causing massacre in Cleveland, in Atlanta, in Phoenix, in Charlotte. And again, I do not want to underestimate those teams and the fans if they are listening us. But those teams that I am mentioning are just sub 50% teams. They are not on our level. We should be able to defeat those teams by playing 2 of our top 4 players and the rest of the bench. So it is beyond my sense of comprehension why Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge and the Celtics do not apply load management that many smart teams are doing. Dallas Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki and that generation. San Antonio Spurs with Popovich the last 2 decades. Miami Heat with Eric Spoelstra in their, championship years. Right now, Philadelphia 76ers. Everybody except the Celtics, they are resting the stars for the big games because those big games means more in psychological way and result way, meaning more than the small games. And also, the regular season do not mean anything except the playoff seedings. And if you have the talent, the playoff seeding could not mean anything. We saw Cleveland winning title 2015 from the position number 3 or 4. We saw Cleveland comfortably winning East the 9 years, James winning East with Cleveland and Miami the 9 years. Many years he was not number 1 seed. He was coasting throughout the regular. Only stupid people are chasing number 1 seed if they have enough talent to win the Eastern Conference. So those are normal things. We just hope that the Celtics will accept the advices, like you said, somehow throughout our site, and that the Celtics fans will get the things right in their heads, what are the priorities in the season, and that everything will turn out good for the Celtics in the future. And we are looking forward to speak with you on January 5th on the video chat that will be out on our YouTube channel on January 6th or 7th, hopefully. For now, this chat 48 is over, and we want to thank all the fans for support. From Danny and Igor for the Celtics Talk Radio. Danny, the closing words?
Yeah, like we said, the next few weeks, the Celtics shouldn't be losing to anyone until that game we play against Philadelphia, unless, as I said, unless we end up deciding to rest the night before against San Antonio, which at that point you can understand a loss because you're thinking of the bigger picture of the game against Philadelphia the very next night in this case. But unfortunately, I don't think Brad Stevens is going to do it in this case. So you shouldn't lose to anybody until that game in Philly in this situation.
You could expect 35 plus minutes for the top 4 players in San Antonio.
Exactly.
And the next night, when we lose against Philadelphia, the fans will say, "Well, we were tired. We played a back-to-back game. We played the last night, the night before in San Antonio." Don't give me that crap anymore, okay? Right?
Exactly. So again, it's going to be a crazy situation. The next few weeks. I know if you're a Boston fan, right now especially if you're a pro Boston fan, meaning you root for all 4 teams, you're probably after being,
like us.
If you're after being ticked off with the Celtics performance yesterday, your blood is probably boiling hot at 180 degrees with the Patriots performance against the Miami Dolphins that took place just before me and Igor came together for this chat, so now the Patriots got to play in round 1 starting next week against either the Titans, Steelers, or Raiders, so we'll know who that's going to be within the next hour or so. But it is absolutely unacceptable, ladies and gentlemen. There's no way to get around it. How our guys in both those games, the Patriots and the Celtics, played in this situation on their home turfs in this case. Both teams looked like they just were not engaged and really didn't want to win in this situation in games that were big against teams that they should have beaten. And in the Patriots case, it's even more disappointing knowing what was on the line. At least with the Celtics, we're still not even midway through the season. With the Patriots, you now lost the first round bye and now have to play next weekend when you could have been resting your guys to get healthy for round 2. So it's unfortunate, Igor, that fans in both the Patriots and Celtics groups, after losses yesterday and today, still don't want you to criticize the team for not showing up. So it looks like I said, it's basically not the disease in the Celtics group is obvious. It's not one that basically just stays in the Celtics group. It's spreading to other groups and to all fan bases, But in this situation, ladies and gentlemen, that game was unacceptable. You have no choice but to accept it, unless you're somebody who's living in a parallel universe. There ain't nobody that isn't a Celtics fan that will tell you that will tell you in this situation, oh, that was a great performance. You can go talk to TV analysts, sports analysts, and they'll all tell you that was a lackluster performance your guys gave against Toronto in this situation, and it's the truth. Our guys had better get their act together in this situation and not lose any of these other games until that game against Philadelphia, because another loss to any of these other teams, Igor, in the next few weeks, which are all teams with losing records, if I'm correct, or around maybe 500 or so, but none of them with winning records, that is going to be even more embarrassing than a loss to Toronto.
Absolutely. I mean, those 4 games, you can say that there are trap games because those teams don't have anything to lose, and you have everything to lose if you're the Celtics. So those are 4 easy games, but at the same time 4 trap games. And you said everything right. I hope that both Patriots and the Celtics will get their focus right, and in the Celtics case, to set their focus and to set their priorities right. What is the priority and what games are the priorities? I don't think that they have the priorities set right now, and that is the biggest problem. That was all, ladies and gentlemen. Chat number 48, analyzing 3-1 stretch, in which the Celtics, defeated Toronto in Canada, but had horrible loss in Boston, 113-97. Until the next video chat and the next shows, we are wishing you happy years, happy holidays, and all the best. Go Celtics, go Patriots, go Sox, go Bruins. Daniel?
Yep, so you all have a safe and happy New Year. Happy New Year celebration this coming week in this case. And we'll talk to you all again next week. I believe we'll be doing the video chat in this situation again and later on this week. And then we'll have a radio show. I believe it's on the 10th. So we will basically speak to you guys in this case then. And again, you all celebrate safely and bring in the new year the right way as we get ready to celebrate 2020.
Have a good night.